So this all took place last winter, when I was returning to my hometown during the break. I was excited to finally catch my breath and ease up from the stress of uni, and getting to see my friends and family again sounded like the perfect break. Everything was going just as I thought it would. I was having friends over, playing video games late into the night, drinking my parents' beer, and overall just relaxing. Things wouldn't get strange until about 4 days into the break, when one night, I was staying up in our living room playing some video games at about 1 a.m. My parents were gone for the next couple of days visiting our aunt, and I had the house all to myself. This was an ideal situation for me though. I could be as loud as I wanted, and essentially do whatever I wanted while my parents were gone. That night though, things got strange. It's important to note, our house is on about 10 acres of land, and up in the hilly farm area just outside of town, and it had snowed about 12 inches the past couple of days. As I was playing my video games and chatting with my online friends, I heard the faintest tap on the window next to the front door. After hearing this, I told my friends I'd be right back, and made my way to the front room. At this point, the curtains were open, and I peeked outside into the pitch black darkness of the night, not seeing anything right off the bat. Being a tall guy, 6'1", 220 pounds, and being trained in some martial arts, I wasn't terribly frightened. So, I decided to open up the front door and get a better look outside after flicking on the porch lights. When I peeked my head outside, my stomach dropped, and I knew the situation I was in instantly. There were footprints, leading right up to the window where I heard the tap, that then wandered off towards the back of my house. I wasted no time in calling the police and informing the operator of what I just saw outside my house, and the tap I heard leading up to it. She instructed me to remain calm, and told me they were going to send police over, but that it could take some time due to the heavy snow we received. I was nearly in tears at this point, and the tough guy act was quickly fading. The thought of someone watching me through my window at night while I'm alone sends a chill down my spine. While remaining on the phone, I quickly rushed around my house, making sure all entrances were closed and that the curtains were shut as well. After this, the operator told me to go up to my parents' room and lock the door and to wait for the police to arrive, so I did just that. My parents' room has a clear view of the entire backyard, leading into the forest behind our house. What I saw when I looked out the window burned an image in my head that I can't get out. At the very end of the tree line, I saw a giant man in all black clothing, looking up at my window, barely illuminated by the back porch lights. In his hand was what looked like a crowbar, dangling at his waist side. After around 30 seconds of staring at me, and me being frozen in fear, he turned around and walked off into the forest. The police finally got there about 40 minutes after the call, and they decided to pursue the track the next morning after the storm had subsided. What they found was that the track slowly faded out into the forest, and they were untrackable after a distance beyond the tree line. At this point, they have nothing to go off but his shoe pattern and the size of the print. So to this day, he remains uncaught to my knowledge. From that point on, I wasn't comfortable being home alone anymore, and I always insisted there be someone else with me. So when I was in college, I used to pull all-nighters and fuel myself with takeout and coffee during exam week like any other student. It was early January, so the area around my apartment, which mostly had outstation uni students, was pretty deserted as most of the people hadn't yet returned from their winter break. But I, unfortunately, still had an exam left. It was around 2 a.m. that night, my friend/flatmate and I decided to order some food. But our usual restaurant wasn't accepting orders online, so we decided to head out and grab some cup noodles and soda from a nearby 24/7 store. Anyway, as we walked by, most of the usual night stores were shut, and even the 24/7 store was closed for some maintenance issue. I was disheartened, but still very hungry, so I opened my phone, trying to see if anything else was open nearby. I was busy browsing my phone for any place that might be open, and my friend started messing around, saying that she saw something move inside one of the stores, and maybe it was following us. And I brushed her off as usual, as I knew she had a habit of trying to spook me. However, as we started to head back home, my friend suddenly huddled close to me and told me to call someone. Me, being the hungry and dense idiot that I am, thought she meant to call up a restaurant, so I told her in an annoyed tone that I was trying to. We reached a T-point intersection on the main road when my friend suggested that we take the inner lane, which is a shortcut to our apartment, as the streetlights on the main road are out and it's pretty dark there. I agreed quickly, as the inner lane is pretty well lit and we know our way around. As we walked into the lane, my friend, who had been acting strangely until now, started to tug me by my elbow, and before I could question her, she looked at me in the eye with a somewhat scared smile and told me that we needed to run. She then started running, like actual full-on sprinting. Now, usually I ignore her antics when she tries these practical jokes on me, but for some reason that night, I too began to run because something in my gut told me to listen to her. However, after a bit, I was cold and out of breath, and I yelled out to her, "Can you just stop? There's no one around. Stop messing about." She slowed her pace and turned around, and by now I was more than annoyed at her for trying to spook me. Mind you, by this point there were a few feet of gap between us, and as I caught my breath and turned to look up at her, I could see her expression had paled all of a sudden. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking behind me. It was at this point my sleep-deprived, cranky brain realized that something was seriously wrong, and I heard a noise behind me. What I didn't know was that our stalker, who had been steadily following us, was only a couple of feet behind me, and when I had yelled at her, he heard me and started to run towards me. I still can't completely describe that moment. The sound of someone's weird laughter and footfall behind you. The sound of your own pounding heart. The way your ears go all hot and tingly. It was my body being aware of just a lot at once. So when I semi-turned back and saw a random, full-ass grown man sprinting his way towards me, I didn't know how to react. I'd like to think that I could have unfrozen myself, but it wasn't until my friend forcefully gripped me by the arm and started pulling me that I began to run. I heard him yell and roar behind us, but I couldn't understand what he was trying to say, and at this point I was busy running and too scared to turn around. I think it was the adrenaline in my veins and my friend's grip on my arm that helped me not lose my shit and run the fastest I ever have in my life. We zigzagged our way through the lanes to lose him, and we finally managed to get to our block. The last my friend turned to check, he'd begun to slow in his pursuit when we crossed the barricade to our area. When we entered our apartment building, I crumpled down by the elevator floor, still trying to process the entire chase and to figure out why this man had decided to chase us. My friend then told me she'd seen him looking strangely at us when we were around the convenience store, and he was near a truck unloading some boxes. She'd dismissed him, assuming he was a part of the store maintenance crew, but something about him made her feel uneasy. Later on, when we were at the T-point, from where we entered the inner lanes, she said that she saw him again with his truck, following behind, and felt that it could be a coincidence, but that she felt it was still better to take the inner lane, where the truck couldn't go in. When she finally saw him for the third time, by the corner of the lane, silently walking his way towards us, she knew that he was following us for real, and we had to shake him off. She always used to jokingly quote to me, "Once is hapstance, twice is coincidence, but thrice is enemy action." I still think it couldn't be more true in this case. Even though a lot of my friends later told me that we could have taken him on, as he was only one person while we were two. At the time, we didn't want to take any chances, in case he had his friends waiting around. To this day, I thank the fact that I trusted my gut to run, even though I was unaware of the exact nature of the danger behind me initially, and also my friend that ran back to drag my dumbass, even when she could have easily outran him. It's been 3 years since then, and even now, my brain automatically tries to scan who is around me, and tries to mark out possible exits of any room I'm in. My bedroom is the hottest room in the entire house. In the winter, I have to almost fully cover the vent to block heat from coming in, and I have to sleep with the window open a tiny bit to keep it from getting too hot. I have medical issues that cause me to get violently ill if I get overheated. When it's fall, I generally keep the bedroom windows open. They have screens on them, and I have blinds and blackout curtains, and I sleep with them open. I have a window at the front of the house, and a window on the side of the house in my room. The other night I was watching TV, because I have horrible insomnia, and I just couldn't fall asleep. Sometime after midnight, I heard footsteps outside my window on the side of the house. There was thick snow outside all around, so it was fairly audible and it made a loud crunching sound as someone stepped down. I paused my show and listened, honestly just figuring it was one of my roommate's dogs. I realized, unfortunately, that there was no way it was either of his dogs. The girl dog is much younger, maybe a year old, and she prances everywhere. It's pretty adorable and very distinctive since I hear her out there several times a day. His other dog is a large dog, but he's very old, very fat, and slow-moving. He generally can't even walk the distance from the back door to the other side of the house near my window. His walk is also very distinctive because he hardly lifts any of his paws. He's seriously super old. He hardly moves when he walks. I also noticed that it was very clearly the steps of someone walking on 2 feet. Within seconds of me pausing the TV, the steps completely stopped. I listened for a while, but eventually turned the show back on. We do have a tree between us, by my window, and our neighbor. It's completely plausible that if someone was outside my window, they could have climbed into the tree and waited until they could get away without being heard. Eventually, I fell asleep. Just a little while ago, I had dozed off watching TV, only to be woken up by my cat frantically jumping on my head to look out the window. He never looks out that window when I'm asleep, because he can't find a way to the window without stepping on me and waking me up. His tail was puffed out, and the hairs on his back were slightly raised. I've rarely seen him do this. He has only acted like that one time towards an animal, and that was a cat we brought into the room and allowed to eat his food. He looks out the open windows all the time. He loves seeing other animals. This took me from scared to absolutely freaked out. I paused the show again, and it was unmistakably human steps outside my window again. Only this time, they didn't stop when I paused the TV, and they definitely weren't trying to be quiet this time. I heard them take several quick steps, and the sound faded towards the front of the house, confirmed when my cat launched himself across the room to look out the window. I heard what sounded like a car door, and then nothing more since. I called the police, and 2 searched the outside of the house with flashlights, and another car drove around, shining their spotlight around the neighborhood. I'm hoping that whoever this is doesn't keep coming back. I'm gonna get some cameras as soon as I can to put outside my window so that I can find out who this is and have them stopped.